Okay, so for my project, you will have pre-cut for you 2 pieces of 8x8 medium weight chipboard and a piece that is 8 by 1.5. You will have a full sheet of the lightweight chipboard. From that, you're going to cut a piece that is 7.5 by 7.5, and then you're going to cut 3 pieces that are 7.5 by 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to set those aside for right now. From your cardstock, you are going to cut, hold on, I've got my piles out of whack here. Okay. To wrap our chipboard for our cover, you need 2 pieces of cardstock that are 10 by 10. For the spine, you need 1 piece that is 10 by 4.5. And to reinforce the spine, you need 1 piece that is 8 by, I believe it's 5.5. Okay. This one, you will cover the entire back of this with score tape. You need to cover, well, you can glue your chipboard when we go to make the covers if you want to. It's better if you can cover it with score tape. Same thing with the spine piece. In addition to those pieces, for the box, you need a piece of cardstock that is 11 by 10. This one we will score and work on in a minute. And then for the inside, you're going to have a piece that is 7 3/4 by 8 3/4. 7 3/4 by 8.5. And then you'll have 2 each. 7 3/4 by 7.5. The other half of that piece will be 7 3/4 by 4.5. You'll have 2 each of those. You'll have 2 pieces that are 6.5 by 7 3/4. The other half of that piece is going to be 5.5 by 7 3/4. And there will be 2 of each of those as well. So let's start with our album cover. Okay, so for the cover, you're going to put one of your 10 by 10 pieces on your scoreboard. If you have the acrylic spacers, you're going to want your 1-inch spacers. If you do not have the acrylic spacers, what you can do is just score 1 inch, turn, and go 1 inch again, and use those lines to help line up your chipboard. And if you're doing it that way and it's not completely exact, that will be just fine. The way this method of wrapping it goes together, it's not as fussy as something slightly crooked at this stage. Okay, so I've covered the entire back of my chipboard with tape. You can glue this if you would like. Be careful, though, to burnish it really well so that you don't have glue lines. Not usually too much of an issue with artisan cardstock, but just in case. Okay, I'm going to put that one down. I'm going to do the same thing with my next one. Okay. All right. And then we're going to go ahead and put our spine piece on its cardstock. So for this one, you're going to swap out the 1 inch for your 1.5. Again, if you don't have the spacers, you can score 1 inch at the top and 1.5 on the side, just to make sure that this gets lined up right. Okay. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to fold the cardstock around the chipboard. So I'm just going to use my board and just push down and fold over and then burnish where it folds. Okay. And again. And again. Okay. We're then going to cut out the corners. And then we're going to miter. So you're going to fold in, and anywhere that sticks out, you're going to put your scissors against the side of your chipboard, angle in, and trim. Other side. And then fold that little tab in and do the ends. Okay. You're then going to take some glue. You're going to run some right up against that chipboard in the open space. Use your bone folder, push up against the side of the chipboard, and then over and burnish this down. Try not to get too carried away with the glue because you don't want to make a mess. Do the same thing to the other end. Okay, we can set this piece aside. For the covers, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to bend the chipboard around. I'm going to go ahead and bend the other one as well. Okay, and then we're going to cut out the corners again, just like we did on the spine piece. Once you've cut the corners out, you're going to go ahead and miter this one just like you did with the spine on all sides. I'm going to do it on the other one as well. Now, I like to use a combination of glue and score tape to wrap my cover pieces. It's entirely up to you. You can do it with just glue if you would like. I'm going to go ahead and get my score tape around my edges. And again, if you want to use just glue, that's fine. You can do that as well. So, if you're using score tape, you're going to go ahead and pull the backing off on all 4 sides. If you're just using glue, then you're going to start at this step. So I'm going to do glue along the edge of the chipboard, and then in the center, I'm going to take my bone folder, I'm going to push up against the side of the chipboard, and then over and down. And just continue that all the way around. Okay. We're going to do the exact same thing on the other piece. And again, glue along the edge of the chipboard, and then in the middle, use your bone folder to push up against, and then burnish that down. So now I'm going to take my spine piece, I'm going to put it pretty side up, I'm going to take my bone folder, and I'm going to go along the edge of that chipboard and just go back and forth and work that paper down along the edge of that spine piece. Okay, same thing on this side. And then again, I like to still use a little bit of tape, especially on this part, because that way there's something for your cover to grab onto immediately so that you don't have it slip as you're putting this together. So I'm going to take the backing off of one side. I'm going to grab one of my covers and have it ready. I'm going to put glue in this interior section. And then I'm going to take and line my cover up. And if you have a hard time with this part, if you put it in your scoreboard and use the edge to line it up, that is very helpful and works beautifully. Okay, we're going to repeat on the other side. Glue everywhere again. Okay. I can tell by looking. Oh, no, again. Okay. Just looked weird to me for some reason. Okay. Carefully turn your book over and burnish down. Okay. Next thing you're going to do is take your piece that is 5.5 by 7 7/8. Get the tape off the back, and I strongly suggest that you do use tape on this step so that this does not bubble once you put it down and then go to fold the sides of your book up. Okay, so I am just going to center this over my spine. And put that down and then burnish it down. Okay. If you're gluing this, you're going to have to let this sit for a few minutes to make sure it's good and dry. Make sure you burnish a lot so you get that glue nice and spread out if you are gluing it. Once it's dry, or if you're using score tape like I am, you're going to fold up and just use your bone folder to work that crease. Okay. Do the same thing on the other side. Okay. And I'm going to fold and then pinch. And there's your cover. Okay. So we're going to set this aside. And I want you to get your 7.5 by 7.5 inch piece of lightweight chipboard and a ruler. Apparently I've lost my ruler here somewhere. Okay, so what you're going to do, and you have a couple of ways that you can do this, just depending on how comfortable you are doing this. You want to measure in 1 inch from each side and make a line. Draw a line. Make a line, draw a line. You know what I meant. Okay. So I'm going to turn. And one more time. Okay. So now you need to cut out this center section. And this is where I'm saying you can draw the lines and then cut it. You can cut it with scissors. You can do it with a craft knife and your ruler. You can do it with your trimmer, whatever your preference is. If you're really comfortable making frames, which I am, I usually don't even draw the lines. I will just come in here, set it in my trimmer, and cut. I prefer this method simply because sometimes your ruler slips and you don't realize it until you cut and your frame's wonky. So there we go. And as you can tell, one of my 1 inch marks was totally off. No, it's still totally off. What did I do? I slid over too far. That's okay. Easily fixed. Okay. So now, I want you to get your scoreboard and your 11 by 10 inch sheet of cardstock. We are going to start with the 11 inches across the top of the scoreboard. You're going to score it 7/8 of an inch and 1 3/4. Okay, 7/8 on the score pal is the little line in between 3/4 and 1 inch. Okay, you're going to turn to the 10 inch side and score again at 7/8 and 1 3/4. You're going to turn again, 7/8, 1 3/4. One more time, only this time you're only going to score at 3/4. Okay? So on your directions, there's a picture of where we're going to cut on the score lines that we just did. You're going to cut here and here, here and here. So we're getting rid of those two areas. Up here, we're going to cut here and here, here, and then all the way down here, so that you're getting rid of those. And again here. Actually, not that one. That one was a mistake. So, okay. So I'm going to cut up, up, that's going to leave you with a little tab. Same thing on the other side. Up, up, and again, you have a little tab. On the bottom, you're just going to cut out those two squares. And that's what your totally trimmed piece is going to look like. Now, I'm going to turn it so the bumpy side's facing up. We are going to adhere down our frame in the middle. Okay? This should fit right on all of those interior score lines. You can use glue, you can use score tape, it's entirely up to you. You can use a combination, which is what I'm going to do. Oh, I'm getting that all twisted up there, weird. Okay, I'm actually going to go around the inside piece too. Which that's going to get paper folded over it, so it's really not as big of a deal. I'm just trying to make this as easy on myself as possible. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and get all the backing off of this. If you're not using tape, then go ahead and just get glue on the back of your frame. Okay. We're going to put this in the middle, and I line it up on the bottom where we just have the 1 3/4 inch tab and put it down. There we go. Okay, so now you've got these 3 small pieces. These are going to go up to the outside score lines. So this line here, this line here. Again, I'm going to put tape on here. It's going to have cardstock completely around it, so it doesn't need to be like crazy. But just something to get them in place. Make sure that they grab immediately. So again, this is going towards the outside score mark so that you have a little gap in between the side and the frame. Okay. Do this again. The outside score mark. Okay. Once those are down and they've had a minute to dry, we're going to go ahead and fold these outer tabs up and over and adhere them down. Okay, like so and like so. Again, if you want to use a combination of glue and tape, you can. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and glue. Use my bone folder. Push that over and burnish it down. And one more. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is take your craft knife, and if you need to use a ruler to help guide you on this, you can. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you're just going to make an X in the middle of the frame. Okay? Once you have that, you're going to cut about 1/2 of an inch, 3/4 of an inch roughly. It doesn't have to be exact. Up from the side of the frame. And then again, we're going to fold those in and glue. But I am going to go around the inside of my frame with score tape because I did cut these a little shorter than I probably should have. It'll still work. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult to make it work. So I'm going to go ahead and get the backing off my tape. Okay. And then I am going to fold these up. And I'm going to use my bone folder to kind of smooth that out, and then over and down. And see, if you leave them a little longer than what I did here, it does make it easier, especially if you're gluing them, because there's a little more surface area to get that to stick to. Okay, now we need to put our acetate on. The easiest way to do this, because you don't have a whole lot of extra space, and yes, my tissue paper is still on the back side of this. You don't have a whole lot of space around the window. The easiest way to do this is to take your score tape and go around the window right up to the edge. Okay. All right. So once you get that down, you're going to go ahead and pull the backing off on one piece only. Just make sure you're getting this lined up right. And I will start by laying it down where the backing is still on the score tape, and then dropping that down. Then all you have to do is lift up, pull up your backing on your other pieces, and then put that down. Okay? Now, we're going to go ahead and make our box. So what we're going to do is you're going to push down as you fold that over. Okay? And what I mean by that is you've got that little bit of a gap. What you're going to do is you're going to push that cardstock into that gap as you fold this over. Okay? Then, this is where you need your clips if you have them. I'm going to put glue on this tab. I'm going to line up my corners, and I'm going to fold that around. I should have checked that first to see if it needs mitered, which mine actually looks like it's okay. This one does need mitered just a little bit. Possibly both directions. Okay. And then you're just going to repeat that on this other side. And use your clip and set this aside. Okay, so next we're going to look at our pages. So let's get the scoreboard again. Grab my pages. So I want you to make a couple of piles. The ones that you have 2 each, you're just going to separate into 2 piles. Okay. Then you're going to have these 2 pieces. One of them is 8.5, one is 8 3/4. Just add 1 to each pile. Okay. We're going to score all of these, and you can score these before you separate them out. It's totally fine. So for the 4 pages that are the same on both sides, you're going to score so that your 7 3/4 runs down the side of the scoreboard, and you're going to score, whoops, 1/2 inch. Okay. On all of those. For the piece that is 7 3/4 by 8.5, you're also going to score this one at 1/2 inch. Okay. The piece that is 7 3/4 by 8 3/4, you're going to score at 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch. And then I'll just go ahead and score the rest of my pages. Okay. So what we're going to do now, you're not going to miter these. I am going to fold and burnish. And take the next one, fold and burnish. And I'm going to put it with the tab down on my work surface. I'm going to take the small one that's going to sit on top of it. I'm going to get glue on the tab. And then I am going to line this up right on top so that the edge, the long edge, is even and it's lined up top to bottom. Okay? And we're going to burnish that down. You're going to take your next biggest piece, fold and burnish, put it with the tab down, pick up your assembly, glue on the tab, and then do the same thing again. And if any of you made my photo wallet, you should be familiar with this. We're doing this one slightly different in that we're not gluing all of these pages at once because it's almost impossible with them being different sizes to keep them lined up to glue. So, okay. And again. And burnish it down. Okay. So, that is one of your page assemblies with the 4 graduated pages. For the piece that has the 1/4 inch gusset, I want you to fold the second score line, so the 3/4 inch score line, and burnish it. This piece is then going to attach not on the gusset, but in front of the gusset. So you want to have this standing up so that you can line this up and get it where it's not too far back and it's not too far forward. So I'm standing this up. I am pushing that page stack up against it, making sure I'm top to bottom, and then burnishing. Okay. We're going to set that aside to dry. We're going to do the exact same thing with our other stack for the first 4 graduated pages. So we're folding and burnishing, flipping that one down, getting our glue on our tab, and then putting this down, lining it up against that edge. So those outside edges, or those back part of that flap is even with each other. And our next one. And again. Okay. And then with the 8.5 inch piece, we're going to do the exact same thing. So it will go like so. Okay, so now you're going to get your base. You're going to turn it so that it opens away from you. Okay, so your spine is across the center. You're going to want to put this page down to the outside edge, to this bottom outside corner. And kind of put it on there, lay it on there and look, because you may need to trim just a tiny bit off of this end if it's too long, which mine is just a hair too long. So I'm going to go ahead and take about 1/8 of an inch off of it. Once I'm sure it's going to fit and not run into the other page set when we put it on, I'm going to go ahead and put glue on my tab, and this is going to go flush with the outside edge and the bottom. Okay. Okay. The other piece, now we'll go ahead and fold our other score line. And we're going to glue this in on the opposite side. Okay. So again, you're going to go all the way to the outside edge, all the way to the bottom. And glue that in. And once that's glued in, that should fold in and that should fold down over the top of it. And assuming you've lined them up correctly, that's that. Okay, our box. So we're going to go ahead and fold up this bottom tab and burnish. Okay. What we're going to do, you're going to put glue on here. You're going to stand this up. Okay. We're going to line this up. You're going to have about 1/4 inch on each side. And you want to make sure this is standing straight up and that this back part of the frame is touching this when you glue it down. Okay? Because this tab is shorter than the sides of the box. That is on purpose. Okay? So I'm standing this up. I am lining this up side to side, making sure this is standing straight up, and then pushing my frame down, and then you can actually let go of that back, and you'll be able to reach in here to burnish that down. Okay? For now, it's going to fall forward. We haven't done our ribbon to hold it here, and then we still have to do our little magnetic closure. So let me grab that. I'll be right back. Okay, so you should have cut a piece that was 2 inches by 2.5. With the 2.5 at the top of your scoreboard, you're going to score it at 1/2 inch, and then again at actually it says 1 and 2 inches. Actually 1 and 1.5 will have the same effect, so it's fine. Okay, so what we're going to do is you're going to fold this. This is going to sit centered at the top here. Okay, so it actually will sit up above your box, like so. Okay, so we're going to center it. It doesn't have to be exact. You can just eyeball it. If you want to use, your ruler to get it perfectly centered, you can do that. We're going to put that down there. Okay. Another thing that you can do, and I meant to do actually before I put this on, was to take some of my scraps and just cut some strips and go around on this inside just to cover up that. Although once this is done, it's only going to open about this far, that it doesn't really matter unless you want to cover that up. Okay? So you're going to have magnets. I'm not sure which magnets you're going to have. So I'm going to use just some of the kind of oddball ones in my stash. Okay. Got glue on my hands that the tape is sticking to. Okay. So I'm going to stand this up. I'm going to stand this up. And I'm going to see about where this needs to go. So it's going to go fairly close to the top. Okay. Like so. Okay. And then I'm going to fold this over. I'm going to try to keep the top of this level with the top of the book. And then push that down. Which I think I might have actually this wrong. Actually, I think this tab goes on the outside. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this tab goes on the outside. So I'm just going to fold my stuff the opposite direction rather than recut that. It'll be fine. This is going to get matted, so it's not going to matter there. And try that again. Yes, that is how I did it. That's what threw me off. All right, so now this should fit a little bit tighter. Crying out loud. Why is this tape not? Okay, so there's that. Let me grab the ribbon and we will get our ribbon attached and then we can talk about some of the matting. Okay, so for the ribbon on this, and this is probably the trickiest part of this whole thing, I took 2 little strips of, well, seam binding, I guess it really is, roughly about 3 inches long. I then took score tape and I put it about 2 inches up on the inside of the frame. Okay. Then I'm going to take those little pieces get the backing off of here. I'm just going to put the seam binding down on that. And honestly, I think score tape, when attaching seam binding, especially in something like this, just works way better than glue. Okay, and this is the tricky part. So you're going to stand it up. You're going to see about where it needs to attach on here. I can get another piece torn off. There we go. Okay, so I need to go about here. And I'm going to go out about 1/8 of an inch from the edge, about where your matting would start. Okay. Okay. I'm going to do the exact same thing again. Backing off the score tape. I'm going to stand this up and I'm going to get this. You can do this as loose or as tight as you want. In fact, honestly, it's easier if you kind of hold it this way, but you're not able to see what I'm doing. So I just kind of decided about how far I wanted this to open. That's where I'm saying you don't need a whole lot of the score tape. I only want this to open about like so. So I am going to get the end of my ribbon about where I want it to actually open. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And this is why we're attaching it. If you're going from the top, it's a little bit easier. Okay, if you want to try to trim off that extra in there, you can. To do that, I would suggest laying it over like this and then just trimming that off. Okay. All right, so that much is done. So matting. You will have the 8x8 collection of Homer's Dino. Okay. So you'll have the small cut aparts. You should have the pre-cut full-size cut aparts. I'm sorry, tags. These. You have these. And then you have 3 sheets of each print. So for the box, I used these 2 sheets. Okay. What I did, let me grab my good trimmer, not the Whiskers one. And it has this on your directions. I'm not going to go through all of the matting. I'm just going to kind of walk you through what I did on the box itself. Okay. So I'm going to take one of these pieces. I am going to cut a 5/8 of an inch strip off of the bottom. Okay. Let me grab my actual original book to show you. Okay. So we're going to turn this over so that you have that checkerboard pattern. Okay. And I'm going to glue that down right here. But I need to take 1/8 of an inch off of the end. Okay. All right. Okay. So then, for the counter, what I did was I just kind of looked at this, kind of figured out where I wanted this. Well, I did center this actually. So I centered it, and then I fussy cut around the little diner pieces, put that on a piece of black cardstock, and fussy cut again. For this top part up here, I took and fussy cut across. Okay, and then backed it on black again and did the same thing again. That was in part because I forgot to cover up my magnet on the back side there. And then I just did a couple of pieces, you know, from the scraps of the black checkerboard. And then the back side, this piece on the sides is the back side of, hold on, I gotta find it and apologize. I forgot it was off of a completely separate sheet. Just saw it, where'd it go? Okay, it's just strips from this. So this I cut literally just strips because this covers it up. I didn't like try to cut a frame. I just cut strips, 7/8 of an inch wide of this, and put them around the frame itself. Okay? You don't have to get too fancy. And then I just flipped it over and did strips around the outside of the back side of that. Okay? That's all there is to that part. For behind the, in the back here, I know what I'm trying to say, it's just not coming out right. Okay. For that, I think I just took 7/8 of an inch off of one side. Might have been a little more than that. Basically, however you're going to do this, I cut this to mat on the back so that where it started was the same place that my fussy cutting started, so that when they're both in here, they line up exactly. Okay, so if I started fussy cutting on this one, on the edge of this shake, which I started partway through the shake, and I'm not sure why. Possibly because I had matted back behind there beforehand. I think that's exactly what it is. Okay, I know how I did this. Sorry, I did this in like January. Okay, so for the piece that goes inside in the back, I put it right side up, took 7/8 of an inch off of this side. Okay, and then I took 7/8 off of the bottom as well. And of course, if you don't want to do it this way, you absolutely don't have to. I just was kind of going with a theme here, and that is why it's like that. So that's going to go in there like so. Okay, I am going to go ahead and glue that in. Since it's cut and ready to go, I might as well. Okay, and then that will both cover up the edges of our ribbon that we used in the back, and it will reinforce it so that it holds. Okay. So now I would go ahead and fussy cut my piece here. And to get it lined upright, what I'm going to do is measure this. This should be 7.5. So I'm going to take 1/8 of an inch off the same side we took it off on the other. And then I'm going to measure it down to 7 3/8. So I'm going to take 1/4 of an inch off. Actually, I think I fussy cut it before I cut that off. So that's what I would do. For the rest of the matting, again, it's up to you. What I did is I took the, grab the rest of the paper here. Homer's Diner, matted it on here, and then took the second one and fussy cut, matted it on black, and popped it up on top to give it some dimension. It just, you know, looks really neat. For the front, I did something very, very similar. So I matted with this page. I then fussy cut out, or I cut this piece out, okay, on the inside of that little kind of turquoise teal border. And then I fussy cut the second one and did the same thing with popping it up. This one, after I cut that out, I put it on black, and then I put it on a sheet of my colors. I think yours is a different color. And I don't remember what color it is, but I don't think it's one I have on hand. So, so yeah, that's where that all comes from. Everything else inside, so this. Everything else inside, so these are the tags from the full-size sheet. These should be pre-cut in your kit. If not, they'll be 12 by 12 and you'll just fussy cut them. The rest of this, I used the extra My Colors that's in there to mat and do photo mats and so on and so forth. And other than that, once you get inside, do it however you want to. I matted all of my cut-aparts or my tags on black cardstock before putting them down so that they kind of stood out more. I did a really thin border. I probably would have preferred a bigger border on those than what I did, but that's okay. But that is it. So there you go. Thank you. I hope you guys have fun at the retreat if you are watching this after the fact to finish up your project. So thank you.